that we are hosting. And the topic of this first webinar, based on your voting on the community of practice, is tools to address metadata challenges. So today we are starting that topic with a bit of an intro and looking at some of these tools. And we have part 2 of this webinar scheduled for December 17th. And it's myself, Ola Poppe, and Jason Pickering who are going to run these 2 webinars. So the plan for this first webinar is to just give a bit of a background to metadata integrity and metadata challenges. Some of the work that has gone into improving this functionality in DHIS2 in this area. And then just a quick background on what these tools for metadata challenges are. Then we'll go into just reviewing some of the tools that we've developed over the last year. And we hope there will be some time at the end for some questions. So just starting here with a bit of a timeline as a background to this topic, or what's been happening with DHIS2 and metadata integrity over the last few years, because there has actually been a lot of new things developed and released since 2021, roughly, starting with the R-based tool that we developed together with a completely new set of guidelines on metadata integrity, metadata assessments back in 2021. Sort of building on that work, DHIS 239 came with a completely new metadata integrity API backend. So that was in 2022. The following year, Jason released a DHIS2 app in the App Hub that used this API to access make this new metadata integrity API endpoints accessible in the UI. And then last year, the whole data integrity functionality inside DHIS2 in the core data administration app was updated to also use this new API. So in this period, there's been a lot of work going into updating, like I said, the guidance and the functionality we have to identify different metadata integrity issues, metadata problems. So from DHIS 41, we have a new well-performing metadata integrity API. We have a new user interface in the data administration app for looking at the metadata issues. The new API supports custom metadata integrity checks, so any DHIS2 implementer can define their own checks and add those to be included as part of the API. And with this new API backend, we are also able to add more integrity checks a lot quicker than we were able to before. So over this period, we've been able to expand a lot on the availability of metadata issues. We can find a lot more, but the challenge has been that we haven't had a lot of tools and guidance necessarily to address all the problems that we are able to identify. So we're now able to find lots of things that we don't have a clear answer when people ask, how do we fix this? And that's the background to the different tools that we're talking about today. Over the last year, we've worked on these tools as a way to provide the community with something they can use to address at least some of the metadata problems that we are able to identify. So we call this tools for system administrators, or simple tools for system administrators. And it's something that it's the implementation team at the HISP Center that has been working on primarily, mostly Jason and myself. So it's important to highlight that these tools are not going through all the official QA processes that the core DHIS2 apps go through. They're not following all the same sort of rigorous guidelines and processes that the core team of developers have when they work on the core DHIS2 apps. So you have to be extra careful when you are using this app. Make sure that you test everything properly in a development environment, etc. And it's also important to keep in mind that these apps are not intended to be used by end users. They're specifically for the system administrators, the core team of DHIS2 administrators to use to work on metadata issues, metadata maintenance. So typically the tools are built to identify or fix one particular type of metadata issue. So each app is sort of very focused on one thing. They typically have a very basic user interface, since they're just intended to be used by a very small group of people. And the way they work generally assumes that you have wide authorities and access to metadata. So they only work when the user using them are administrators or super users. So this is just important to keep in mind if you want to use some of these apps in your own implementations. So I think if we think generally on how to address issues with our metadata, integrity issues, or just generally improving how the metadata is grouped and named, etc. I think it's, in general, it's a good idea to keep it simple, use the DHIS2 maintenance app, the user interface when it's possible. When that's not possible, either because it's an operation that is not possible to do in the user interface, or because you just have too many objects that you need to update, for example. Maybe you have hundreds or thousands of metadata objects you need to change. Then using the API is safer than using SQL in the Postgres database because there are more restrictions and validations in the API. But then there are some things that you have to rely on SQL to resolve. Whenever you're using the API or using SQL, it's very important to try out any operation and document it in a test environment. And that also applies for cases when you're using some of these tools that we're presenting today. So all these tools, they're at least the ones we're talking about today are web apps, so they're all using the API. So they're sort of in the middle of this graph here in terms of the risk to creating problems in your database if you're not careful. So that was just a quick background to this whole idea of the tools. Today we'll be going through a few of them. Mostly Jason talking about these tools today, starting with a sort of an admin toolbox tool, which is almost like a separate app hub for these tools specifically. Then we have a few more tools that we are planning to talk about in part 2 of this webinar in December. So with that intro, I will hand over to Jason.
Yeah, great. Okay. Hi, everybody. Can you hear me?
Yep.
Great. Okay. So thanks for joining. It's great that everybody is here. Yeah, I think Olav gave a good sort of background on um, a really brief overview of the data integrity checks. That's in the data administration app, obviously. The front end team did a great job in creating a new user interface for this. We've got around almost 100 checks now that help you to identify all sorts of different potential issues. Some of them are quite easy to fix, some of them may be more difficult to fix. Some of them are important, some of them are not so important. But we've tried to compile basically a list of all the sorts of issues that we've come up against over the years to help you to clean up your systems and keep them clean. One of the challenges, obviously, as Olav mentioned, is, the data integrity checks have identified a problem in our database of category option combinations with disjoint associations. So even understanding what that problem means, we'd have to, look about what we've tried to describe here in the description. But then how do we actually solve it? That was the major challenge once we had done all the work to get all these new data integrity checks performant and in the system and working. A lot of our implementers started asking us, well, great, thanks for telling us we've got all these problems, but how do we actually solve them? We don't have a tool for this particular problem, but one of obviously the ways that Olav mentioned is for instance, this particular problem, category option group sets, which do not contain all category options. This is basically, again, a problem if you have a category option group, but it's a group set and it's not containing all the category options, which it should, then this particular option or this particular check will tell you that. You've only got 3 here, right? So these are 3 problems. And again, solving these types of issues through the user interface is probably the best way, right? As Olav mentioned, if there is a way to do it through the user interface of DHIS2, that's generally always the best and lowest risk way. Both the back end as well as the front end oftentimes have some guardrails to be sure that you don't do anything that's maybe not what you shouldn't be doing.
Jason?
But there are many situations in which the user interface of DHIS2
Jason,
and potentially using the API doesn't make this easy to do. So that was part of the rationale behind these apps that we have developed. We're also calling them tools to distinguish them from sort of normal apps because they're really meant exclusively for the use of the system administrators. The first one that I will show you is the so-called toolbox. This is a really simple way for you to see the various tools which have been developed. This does require the use of a GitHub API key. I'm not going to go through that in this webinar because I think it takes too long. But if you go to our GitHub, which is GitHub DHIS2, and then toolbox, then you'll come to the GitHub repository. There is a description about how to install a personal access token. The reason that this is necessary is to be able to read from the GitHub API, basically. So as you can see in the toolbox here, I've got this program rule validator tool. The currently installed version on this system is 0.13, but the version that's available is 0.16. So this is just meant to be like a really simple way for you to see, the various tools that are available. We've developed how many now? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7.
Jason? Can you hear
around
us?
12. I think there may be a few that may be missing and a few more that we're thinking about. And we do make some updates every now and then. But for the most part, these are pretty simple tools, apps. But you might, of course, you might want to install this on your DHIS2 system if you want. It's completely optional. The other way that you can also find all of these tools, I think all of you had a link somewhere where you can make a query on
Jason,
GitHub. I don't really know
Jason,
exactly how to do that, but
can you
I
hear us,
think we can
Jason?
share that. But if you go to DHIS2 and you can search for basically tool, and most of the time, like this toolbox, tool deprecated authorities, tool dashboard pruner, we've prefaced all of the tools with tool and then basically what this thing does. So that's a toolbox.
Jason, we have
Yeah,
to. We don't see your screen. You need to share your screen.
I'm sorry.
You need to reshare your screen.
Okay. Is that better?
Yep.
I'm having a lot of audio challenges today. Olav, can you speak once again? It was quite low in terms of volume.
Yeah, we were trying to stop you a bit earlier. I don't think you could
Yeah, I
hear
wish
us
you had.
properly. But
Anyway, um, I was droning on there for 4 or 5 minutes. Anyway, I'm having some challenges with the with my audio setup today. I apologize for that. Hopefully everybody can see my screen now. Anyway, this is the toolbox. And let me get rid of this little bar here. I showed you, while I was talking, I showed you a couple different ways to find this. And one of them is just going to our GitHub and looking for tool. There's a whole bunch of tools there. But this admin toolbox is just basically a way for you to find them. So I think the first one that we were going to talk about was the dashboard pruner. It looks like from my toolbox that I've got it installed, and I can also download the version, but I can just open this up. This goes to the repo there, and we release all of these through GitHub. It's just basically like a zip file that you can download. You can install these via the app hub, but you can install them by going to app management and then manual install, and then we'll choose the one that we just downloaded, which is the dashboard pruner. So these work basically like other apps. There are some key differences, as Olav pointed out. One thing is that we've used kind of this very generic sort of icon. All of them have this just to indicate that this is a tool, not really an app. This is the dashboard pruner, and the point of the dashboard pruner is to, well, exactly like it says, prune dashboards. This is the Sierra Leone database. There are 16, in this case, dashboards that have not been viewed within 1 year. This turns out to be a big problem in certain systems, particularly older systems, where there can be many, many, many thousands of dashboards that have never been looked at over the past year. There's another problem as well, dashboards with no items that we'll come back to in a minute. So this is meant to be a way for you to basically to remove these dashboards if you so choose to do so. We can try and, look at the dashboard and see if there's anything there, and then sort of make a decision as to whether or not, we want to keep this. Well, in this case, it looks like there's content here, right? This is simply because of the, I guess it was created many years ago with the Sierra Leone database, and hasn't been updated. This is just a function of the database that I'm using, basically. So it's always a good idea to maybe look at, to be sure, does the dashboard contain any content? If it doesn't, then maybe it's safe to delete it, basically. So we can try like this one, maybe key indicators. Again, all of these are from obviously from the Sierra Leone database. So they've been created a long time ago. They haven't been updated a long time ago. We can also, in certain cases, need to share you can see that this access is set to private, meaning that it's not owned by the user, my own user, essentially. So in certain cases, you may need to share the dashboard with yourself as an administrator to be able to delete it. So this is just basically a way for you to get rid of all of these dashboards that you don't want from, kind of an administrative perspective. The other thing that it can do as well is that we'll just create, an empty dashboard. And then if we go back to the dashboard pruner, we should see dashboards with no items. That was the one that I just created, right? So again, you can check it and see, oh, well, there's actually nothing there. And then I can delete it. Yeah. Okay. So that's what the dashboard pruner does. And it enables you to get rid of dashboards that are empty. This is a very common problem as well. People may create dashboards for training purposes or whatever. The impact of this is really not that significant in many cases, except to create clutter. Where it really can become a problem is if you're a user, like a super user, and you're trying to find something, and you may see many dashboards that are basically irrelevant. So it is a good idea maybe to occasionally clean these up, get rid of ones that are very old, maybe they don't work anymore. That's also another good reason that you can try and open them up, essentially. You can see that we did manage to get rid of that one, so it's gone now, basically. Yeah. So that's all the dashboard pruner does. Any questions about that? I think that's pretty straightforward. Right. Okay, so the next tool that we were going to talk about is the program rule validator. Let's just go back to the toolbox and be sure that I have the latest update. Let's see. Program rule validator tool. Oh, okay, you can see that in this case, the installed version is 0.13, and there's a new version available. So I can click download. It will download the new version of the app. And again, we can't use the App Store to do this. We don't want to make these available via the App Store since they're really intended for administrators only. Go to download and program rule validator. Again, you can see it's the same icon just to distinguish them. We'll go to program rule validator. You'll also note that these apps are just very basic HTML and JavaScript. We're not using any fancy React or anything like that. We've used, in many cases, AI models to help us generate a lot of these apps. So they're very basic with a very basic sort of user interface, but more appropriate for administrators than, say, end users. There are three things that this app does, and the reason that this is needed is that it can be quite difficult to find these problems. It's also, in this particular case, it was not possible for us to write an integrity check to find the problems. The reason is that these program rule conditions, actions, and program variables, Those have to be, well, particularly in terms of the syntax, like in these invalid conditions and invalid actions, they have to be validated by the backend. And that's not something, and meaning in Java. So we can't, all the other integrity checks, we basically use an SQL query where we look directly at the metadata, the database tables, and then determine, category options with no categories, for instance. And we can do that with an SQL query. This particular problem, we cannot. But it can also be very difficult to find this. So in this particular case, we have a program, malaria focus investigation. The name of the program rule is hide species breakdown. And there's some error. It does not totally clear what it is, but we can try and open this up in the maintenance app and see what maybe the problem could be. The reason that we've done it this way through another app is that it can also be very difficult. It's basically impossible to find this through the maintenance app or even the new maintenance app, right? We can't find, it gives us no insight into which one of these, program rules has a problem with its condition. So that's the reason why we basically query the API for all of the program rules and their conditions and see which ones have problems. That's basically what this app does. It's just not convenient to do it through the user interface. Otherwise, we'd have to click on every single one of them and find out this particular problem. So in this case, it says that the expression is not valid, case classified. I may need to ask for some assistance here with all of you guys that are a lot better at writing program rules than I am. I think this is using the old syntax, right? And in this case, it's like case classified as equals blank. And I think that the way that it's supposed to be written, maybe somebody can give me a thumbs up in the comment if I'm doing this right. I'm just kind of winging it here. But I think it's supposed to be this. What do you say, Olaf? Does this work? No, that doesn't work either.
I think you need to replace the curly brackets with quotes when it's inside the
curly brackets with quotes. No, that doesn't work either. Built-in variables. Let's see. Maybe it's because it's not a. Yeah, that's the. I guess that must have been the real problem, right? Is that particular. Let's cancel and go back, and we'll go back to the problem here. Case classified as. You can see that we don't get a whole lot of help from the back end. It says we got an error, but it's not really totally clear what it is. And it looks to me like, and maybe Olav, you can comment, but it looks like this does not exist, basically. So if we change this to something else, that was the actual problem, right? So it can be that that particular program rule variable did not exist. So this just gives you a relatively easy way to find these problems. We can maybe try the next one as well. Program rule. This one is, it looks like probably this same problem, right? Other medicinal allergy exists.
I think it's because it's you have two equal signs and the exclamation mark. I think that's the problem.
Yeah, exactly. Thanks, Olaf. I'm not super great at program rule expressions, but yeah, that was because this had two equal marks, right? Well, did you maybe want to just comment, since you know a lot more about this, comment briefly on what the impact of these types of problems are, of when, a program rule condition is invalid, what happens?
I think basically then it will not run for users in the Capture app. So I mean, how important that is depends entirely on what the program rule is doing. It could be critical if it's supposed to assign a value, and because it doesn't run, it doesn't assign the value, so you're sort of missing data in your program. Or it could be just some warning level validation that you're missing out on. So I think it could be anything from quite serious to not so important. But it's hard to pick up sometimes just by manually testing if you have tens or even hundreds of program rules in a single program.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay, so that was that. That basically is the invalid conditions. Invalid actions is basically the same thing. This is defined here in the program rule actions. And I don't know why this is giving us a warning. Let's try. Okay, it says here is 0 errors and 2 warnings. I'm still getting a lot of feedback here. Can you guys hear me okay?
Yeah, we can hear you.
Okay, yeah, I'm having a lot of problems with audio today. Yeah, so a lot of times, it's not totally clear what this warning means, right? Those of you that know more about program rules might be able to figure out what the particular warning might be. But that particular, I think more to highlight the functionality of the app itself is simply to show you that there is potentially a problem, right? That there is potentially a problem and this is related to the program rule actions. And so the back end is telling us that there's a warning, but it doesn't tell us what the warning could potentially be. So in this case, when you don't see any errors, it's probably not necessarily a problem. I don't know, Olaf, you might know what the warning might be, but it's not always super clear to me when you get these warnings, what it actually means and what the consequence might be.
Yeah, no, I don't know for that one.
Yeah. It's not always super clear. I would probably pay attention to the errors and not maybe worry so much about the warnings that you're getting warnings for. We have asked the tracker team to potentially give us a means to identify what those warnings and errors would be. I think that would be a lot clearer because you can see here, here we get a little bit of insight into what the problem might be. Right, that was the problem there, that syntax was incorrect. But in this case, we get a warning, but we don't really know we don't actually know what the problem is, right? And the problem I think that we identified was that, yeah, I think that particular program rule variable was not available. So if we change the program rule variable, then it looks good. But we didn't get the error, it didn't identify that. And unfortunately, the app itself does not tell you that either, right? It only helps you to identify the actual problem. Okay, I think that was the program, both the dashboard pruner and the program rule validator. Any questions about those? I'm going to check the comments real quick here because I haven't seen.
I don't know if we want to do the questions and comments last since we're recording, and then we can cut the discussions afterwards.
Okay.
I think maybe, I'm not sure if you showed the last tab there with the unused program.
Oh yeah,
rule
I was going to
variables.
get to that. Yeah. So this unused program rule variables, what does that mean? Basically, we've got the name of the program, inpatient morbidity mortality. We have some program rule variable name. But what this check is showing you is that this is not used anywhere in any of the program rule expressions, right? So we have a variable but it's not being used in any expression. So it may be safe to delete it. If we go to inpatient morbidity and mortality, we got to go through the maintenance app, I guess, and to program. Of course, you'd have to do a lot more review here to determine if this is correct, right? And let's see.
Bottom left menu.
Yeah, programmable variable there. So age. So this is telling us that this particular programmable variable, which we have defined, is not used anywhere, right? In any of the expressions. So in this particular case, it may be safe to delete it, right? We could try and see what happens, although you would probably need to conduct a lot more thorough investigation to determine if it's really safe to delete this or not. But that's what the app is telling you, that programmable variable called age has not been used in any of the expressions anywhere. And now, so if we go back to programmable variables and we do validate all, we shouldn't see that. We don't see that basically. And so you can see that there are a number of these programmable variables that have been defined, but that have not been used anywhere. So basically three things to help you clean things up: invalid programmable conditions, invalid programmable actions, and then identifying unused programmable variables as well. Okay, I think we covered everything now, right, Olaf, for the programmable validator?
Yep, I think we
Okay.
have. So then I guess I'll take over the screen again. We have two more tools to show you, and then I think we will have a few minutes at the end to for any questions. Let me find my right window here. Okay, so I will go through two tools that we made related to users and user management. Again, both of them quite sort of focused on doing one particular thing. The first one is just called the user disabler. And what it does is to help you disable users with the addition of some filtering functionality. So the idea here is that you are able to look at the list of users who have not been logging into the system in a certain period of time. So by default, it shows users who have not been logging in the last 6 months. It lets you show basic info about these users to see where they're assigned, what sort of user roles, user groups they have. And then in this app, you can directly disable either a single user, or you can select multiple users and disable them in bulk. There is some additional filtering functionality here. So, I mean, you can filter by a period of inactivity. You can choose to include the users who have never logged in, so meaning they've been someone has created an account for them or created an account invitation, but they never actually used it. You can just include in the list the people who have already been disabled. And you can choose to look at only people in a certain user role or a certain user group. So that's sort of all this app does. Idea here, of course, being that you shouldn't have lots of active user accounts for users who are not using DHIS anymore. So there might be people who have left the organization, etc., who shouldn't have access anymore. DHIS 2 actually has a job that you can schedule to disable users automatically after a certain period. So what you see at the top here of the app is just an indication of whether you have any jobs scheduled in this particular instance already for disabling inactive users. In this case, it says no job exists, and it lets you just create that job here, give it a name, say indicate how many months of inactivity you want to specify before they are disabled, how long in advance the user gets a reminder. Sorry. And this cron expression is letting you choose how often this job should run. So let's say we want to disable inactive users after 12-month period of inactivity. I can create the job. Now it says I have this job scheduled. I can disable or disable it here in the app. And if I go to the scheduler, I can find it here. So that's it for this app. Next one I want to talk about is also related to users. It's called User Admin Role Aggregator. The idea with this app is to help set up account user roles for the people who are supposed to manage other users. The reason that we made this is that we quite often hear about cases where there is some problem of setting up a user role, managing another user role. So people are setting up, looking at the user roles in the users app, comparing the authorities, because as you might know, the concept with user management in DHIS is that a user can only manage users with the same or fewer authorities than themselves. So that means any user role used by a user admin needs to include all the authorities of the users that user is supposed to create or manage. So if you have a user administrator at the district level who are supposed to manage and create data entry users at the facility level, that district level user also needs to have the authorities needed to enter data, for example. So this app is just meant to help create new user admin user roles, as well as validate existing roles to see if there are some authorities that are missed in the admin role. So let me say here, for example, that I want to create a new, let me call it the guest user admin. So this is a new user role for users that are supposed to manage guest users in the system. So typically users who are allowed to log in and just look at the analytics. So I'm now making a new user role called the guest user admin. And it's supposed to manage users with this user role, guest. That means it will get all the authorities from that user, as well as these authorities related to user management. So add update user, delete user, see the users app, and view users. So if I create this role now, I can see in the users app, the user roles, I have a new user role here called guest user admin role for managing users with role and then the ID. If I look at the authorities, I see that it has access to these apps. As well as the user app, so the analysis apps and the users app. While the guest user, the account that this guest admin is supposed to manage, it has the same things minus the users app. So that's the logic here, is that when you create a new admin user, that user role gets all the authorities of the roles it's supposed to manage. If I go back to the user admin role aggregator, and I look at my guest user admin role, I get the list here of the user roles that this user can in theory manage. So it has the guest user, that was my main intention, but I also see that it's allowed to manage these other roles, antenatal care program, etc. In this case, because then these roles all have the same or less authorities than the guest role. If I go back to the user role, and let's say now the guest user also has access to the data quality app. And if I now look at my guest user admin role, it no longer has the authority to manage the guest user role, because this guest user admin doesn't have the data quality app authority. So now it doesn't fill the requirement that it should have the same or more authorities than the roles it is supposed to manage. What I can do now is to modify it by saying I still want to manage the guest users. And then I update. And if I validate this again, guest is back, because now my guest user admin has also gotten the data quality app authority. So that's all this app is doing, helping specifically to create and validate and update user roles related to managing other users. So that was the last app we wanted to talk about in this first webinar. We have 8 minutes left now for any questions that you might have, either to this kind of concept of metadata tools, or to any of the apps that we've been showing today. So we have gone through the admin toolbox, dashboard pruner, program rule validator, user role aggregator, and user disabler. And we have 5 more apps or tools for our next part 2 of this webinar. But let's see if there are any questions. Let me open the chat.
I thought this one was maybe important from the chat. There was a question from Mustafa. After this, installing this admin toolbox application, to whom will it be available to? Super users? Yes. And only those users with all, basically. So unless you assign, basically in order for someone other than the super user to see the app, all of these apps, all of these tools that we've been talking about, you would need to explicitly assign the permission to open that app in DHIS2. But users with all, yes, they will be able to see it as they can see all apps essentially.
Yeah, thanks, Jason. Let me see. I mean, if anyone has a question they want to raise outside of the chat, just you can also speak up, of course, raise your hand. And
yeah, there was a question from Eric. Are there restrictions on supported versions? Yes, there are. I would say it's I don't know if we have a great answer for that. Certainly versions greater than 39, because a lot of these use the data integrity checks. Not all of them. Some of them use the API. I think we have not tested these on all versions. I know that we've tested most of these in versions 41 and above. But for 41 and below, they may work, they may not work. It's a good question. I don't think that we've indicated, like there is on the App Store, we have not indicated what the supported versions are. But I think for most of these, particularly the ones that we showed today, the dashboard pruner, the user role, the user admin role aggregator, the program role variable, I think all of those should work on just about any modern version of DHIS2. These are not using any of the integrity checks, actually. Some of the other apps, tools that we've developed do. But yeah, that might be something we can improve upon to indicate at least what the minimum supported version would be.
yep. I see there's one question on the dashboard pruner. When you delete the dashboard, does it delete the visualizations? And no, it does not.
Yeah, it does not. There actually is an integrity check. I think we do have. We've talked about this of deleting unused visualizations. I think that was on our list of things to do, maybe. But no, it does not delete the visualization. So it only deletes the dashboard itself. I think we do have an integrity check though as well, don't we, Olav, for visualizations which have not been removed. So that might be something that we can add to that pruning tool, is stale visualizations as well. But no, the dashboard pruner does not delete the underlying visualizations themselves. That's a lot more complicated, as you know, because the visualizations might be used in many different places. So this is really only deleting the dashboard and not the underlying visualizations as well.
Yeah. I don't think there are any more questions in the chat. So I think unless someone wants to raise their hand and ask a question directly, we can maybe wrap up.
Yeah. There was just one more question from Mohammed for user disabler module. Is it interoperable with HRIS? I don't think so. I don't know what HRS is, if that's another app or another external tool that you're using. No. All of these tools and apps are really pretty simple, basically helping you to automate some sort of workflow through the API. So if you have those types of external integrations with maybe other systems, no, it will not be automatically disabled. But all of the tools and apps are on GitHub. They're all open source. They're all pretty straightforward and simple, only using HTML and JavaScript. So if it doesn't work for you and you have a bit of either JavaScript or AI skills, as the case may be these days, it might be easy enough to automate that type of thing.
Yep. Okay, so then we'll just end by encouraging you to join the next second part of this webinar on the metadata tools on December 17th. And thanks a lot for joining today.
Thanks a lot.